Episode 6, The Data Vault, How to Protect the Heart of Your WordPress Site. Welcome to the 6th episode of our WordPress Security Podcast. In the last broadcast, we built solid defensive walls around our site's files, protecting its structure and code. Today, we delve into the place where your website's most valuable jewels are stored, its database. We'll talk about why it's so important and how to protect it effectively. The database is the true brain and heart of your WordPress site. Think of it as a super secure, multi-level vault in a bank, where you keep not only all your most valuable content, blog posts, pages, product descriptions, but also user information, including their encrypted passwords, all comments, and the settings of dozens of plugins and themes. Literally everything that makes your site live, unique, and function as you expect is stored right there. What exactly is this database in the context of WordPress? It's simply a very well-organized collection of information, stored in the form of tables on your hosting server. WordPress most often uses a database management system called MySQL, or its very popular and fully compatible counterpart, MariaDB. Now, imagine a nightmare scenario. A hacker manages to gain access to your database. They can do this in various ways, for example, through a SQL injection attack, which involves injecting malicious code into the queries your site sends to the database. What then? The consequences can be catastrophic. The hacker can read all sensitive data, usernames and encrypted but potentially crackable, user passwords, their email addresses, customer data from your store, private messages. They can modify or completely delete your content, all articles, pages, products. They can add their own malicious content or links, for example, redirects to phishing sites, ads for illegal products, or spam links that will destroy your SEO. In extreme cases, they can even gain partial or full control over the database server itself. That's why database protection is absolutely, utterly critical. This is not a place where we can afford any compromises. So, let's go step by step through the most important methods for securing this digital vault. Step 1. Change the default database table prefix, standard WP patch. Don't use standard labels on your data drawers. By default, during installation, WordPress names all tables in the database by adding the characteristic prefix WP underscore at their beginning. For example, WP underscore users, WP underscore posts, WP underscore options. It's a bit like keeping all your secret documents in an archive in folders with a very obvious standard label, super secret documents. Hackers and their automated scripts know this perfectly well. Many automated attacks, especially those attempting the aforementioned SQL injection, are immediately aimed at attacking tables with this default prefix. Changing this prefix to something unique and difficult to guess, for example, my secretin or XYZ789, significantly complicates their task. This adds a valuable layer of security through obscurity, which can filter out some less sophisticated, automated attacks. How to do this? During a new manual WordPress installation. This is definitely the easiest, safest, and most recommended time to change the prefix. During the installation process, when WordPress asks you for database access details, or when you manually edit the WP config PHP file before installation, there is a special field titled Table Prefix. Simply change the default value WP to something else, unique. It can be a combination of letters and numbers, ending with an underscore, e.g., my DB site. Do this always for new installations. On an existing live site, this is where things get tricky. This is a much more risky and complicated operation. Before you even think about trying to change the prefix on a live site, you absolutely, unequivocally, and necessarily must make a full backup of the entire site, both files and, most importantly, the entire database. If something goes wrong and the risk is considerable, you must be able to immediately restore the site to its state before the change. This step is absolutely critical. It cannot be skipped. How to technically change the prefix on a live site? The safest way is to use a special dedicated plugin for this purpose. There are plugins specifically designed for this, for example, Change Table Prefix, though always check its compatibility and reviews before use. Or Brosme DB prefix and tools. Some comprehensive security plugins, like Solid Security, may also offer such a function in their system hardening tools. You must follow the instructions provided by the plugin very carefully. Changing the prefix on a live site is a very delicate operation. The plugin must not only rename all tables in the database, but also automatically update the corresponding entries in the wp-config.php file, the $table prefix constant, and, very importantly, search the entire database, especially tables like WP options and WP user meta, which will have new names after the prefix change, and update all references to the old table names. After the change is made by the plugin, you must thoroughly test your entire site, login, post, and page display, all plugin functionalities, adding comments, placing orders in the store, etc. My advice? If you don't feel absolutely confident, if you don't have extensive technical experience, and your site is already live with the default WPH prefix, you might consider skipping this step or entrusting this operation to someone with a lot of experience. The risk of damaging the site with unskilled changes is quite high. However, I repeat, for all new WordPress installations, always change the prefix from the very beginning. Step 2. Disable public PHP error reporting. Don't reveal your technical secrets. Sometimes, when there's an error in the PHP code on your website, the language in which WordPress, most plugins, and themes are written, the server might be configured to display a detailed error message directly on the page, visible to every visitor. Such messages, while helpful for developers during site creation in a development environment, can reveal very sensitive information to hackers on a production site, i.e., one publicly accessible. For example, they might reveal full file paths on the server, names of PHP functions used, code snippets, or even configuration data. It's like a broken alarm in your house. Instead of just wailing, it displays detailed instructions outside on how to fix it, or even better, how to bypass it. We absolutely want to avoid this. How to do this? Most commonly by editing the wp-config.php file. Guess what first? Of course, back up your wp-config.php file. Open the wp-config.php file, located in the main WordPress directory. You need to make sure the following lines are present in the file, or modify them, preferably somewhere before the line. That's all. Stop editing. Say, PHP error reporting 0, 8 Outgash set, display Chauchan errors 0. Define WP debug false. Define WP debug display false. These lines tell the server and WordPress not to display any PHP errors on the public site. But what if we still want to know about errors to fix them? There's a safe way. You can additionally enable error logging to a private file on the server that will not be publicly accessible. To do this, also add or change the value if it already exists. PHP. Define WP debug log true. If you set WP debug log to true and WP debug is false, PHP errors will be discreetly saved to a debug.log file, which you'll find in the /wp content directory on your server. Only you, with access to the server files via FTP or your hosting's file manager, will be able to read it and diagnose any problems without revealing anything externally. This is a very useful and safe solution. You might also consider adding the line at any set log errors on, which can also help log errors to the system server log if it's appropriately configured by your hosting. Save the changes to the wp-config.php file. Step 3. Configure regular, automated backups of the database itself. Frequent copies of the most important data are essential. As you already know from previous episodes, especially episode 0, full backups of the entire site files, and database are absolutely crucial. However, there's a nuance. Your site's database, especially if it's a dynamic site, a blog with many comments, an active online store, a forum, changes much more frequently than the site's files. Theme or plugin files usually only change during updates. Every new comment, every new post, every setting change in the panel, every new order in the store, all of this is immediately saved in the database. Therefore, in addition to regular full backups of the entire site, it's worth making more frequent, separate backups of the database itself. In case of a database-only problem, e.g., corruption, accidental data deletion, restoring it from a very recent copy, e.g., a few hours old, minimizes the loss of the latest data, those comments, orders, or posts. How to do this? It's best to use a backup plugin that allows creating separate tasks, so-called jobs, for backing up only the database. Popular plugins like Updraft Plus, BackWPup, or WP Vivid Backup Plugin, and many others have such options. In the settings of your chosen plugin, configure a separate job specifically for database backup. Set an appropriate schedule. For a dynamic site, as I mentioned, a database backup is recommended at least once a day. In cases of very high activity, for example, a popular online store with many transactions per hour, it's worth considering backing up the database even more frequently. For example, every few hours, if your plugin and hosting configuration allow it. And now, an absolutely crucial point. Configure these database backups to be sent to an external, secure location. This could be Dropbox, Google Drive, Amazon S3, Microsoft OneDrive, or another cloud storage service. Do not keep these backups only on the same server where your site is running. If the server crashes or gets hacked, you will lose both your site and its backups. It's like keeping a spare key inside a house that might burn down. Step 4. Secure database access at the server level. Let only your site have direct key access. Your WordPress site connects to the database using a special database user and password, the same one saved as constants, dbuser, dbpassword, in your wp-config.php file. We want to ensure that only your site, running on your server, can connect to this database, and not someone from outside trying to directly access the database server and manipulate it bypassing WordPress. How to do this? This often depends on your hosting configuration and capabilities, but there are two basic principles. Strong, unique password for the database user. This is an absolute must. The password stored in your wp-config.php file for the DB password constant should be very strong, long, complex, containing random characters, and unique, meaning not used anywhere else. If you installed WordPress automatically through your hosting panel, e.g. using an installer like Softaculous or Fantastico, it was probably randomly generated and is sufficiently strong. However, if you configured the wp-config.php file manually, creating the user and database yourself, make sure that password is truly strong. You can change it in your hosting panel, in the MySQL database management section. And of course, you must then update it in your wp-config.php file as well. Restrict hosts that have database access, if you have this option. Ideally, the database server, MySQL MariaDB, should be configured to accept connections only from localhost. Localhost is a special name meaning this same server, so only scripts running on your server, like your WordPress site, can connect to the database. This effectively blocks any attempts to connect to your database from external sources, from other servers on the internet. How to check or set this up? It's best to consult your hosting documentation or ask their technical support. In some hosting panels, for example cPanel, there might be a section called Remote MySQL or Remote Database Access. You can manage which IP addresses have remote access to your databases there. Make sure there are no unnecessary entries. Ideally, there should only be localhost, often represented as % or 127.0.0.1 in some configurations, or, in rarer cases, when the web server and database server are physically different machines, the IP address of your web server. Generally, for typical shared hosting, remote MySQL access should be disabled or severely restricted. Conclusion. To summarize today's episode, your database is your digital vault, the heart and brain of your WordPress site. By changing the default table prefix, especially for new installations, by hiding public PHP errors, but logging them for yourself, by regularly creating separate, frequent backups of the database itself and sending them to a secure, external location, and by ensuring a strong database access password and restricting access to it at the server level, you are building solid defensive walls around it. These were the most important strategies for protecting your database. Implementing them may seem complicated, but the benefits in terms of the security of your valuable data are immeasurable. In the next episode, we'll move on to active defensive shields, meaning protection against malware, viruses, and other pests. You'll learn which plugins can help you with this and how to react if an infection is detected. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. Subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date. Talk to you soon, and may your data rest safely.